Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Wheelchair Repair and Service Task Force. My name is Beverly Brakeman, and I am the chair. I want to welcome everybody here today for our meeting. Hi, Representative Case. Before we get into the meat of the meeting, I would like to, we have two sets of minutes to pass. So the minutes from the November 2nd meeting and the November 8th meeting, which were sent out to everybody. Oh, I'm sorry, it's November 2nd and November 9th. So let's start with the second. Do I have a motion to accept the minutes from November 2nd? I guess it would be somebody online or Representative Case. Okay, do I have a second from somebody online?
I'll second.
Okay, thank you, Gary. Any discussion on the minutes? Okay, all in favor? Any opposed? Okay, did you have a question? Did you have a concern, Gary?
No, I was in favor. I'm sorry.
Oh,
There's a little delay here.
Okay, all right, great. So on the November 9th minutes, do I have a motion to accept those? Do I have a second? Does somebody online want to second that? Oh, Wayne. Okay, thank you. Any discussion on those? Okay, all in favor? Any opposed? Great. Okay, thank you to get through that business. That's important. So what we wanted to do is hand it over to, I guess, Wayne. The industry has a presentation we sent out yesterday to answer some of the questions that were raised at the last meeting and some responses that they weren't able to get to because they hadn't been able to digest the consumer presentation yet. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Wayne, I guess, for that presentation.
Yes, thank you. Appreciate it. Appreciate the opportunity. It's good to see everybody. Okay. So yeah, we just wanted to respond to some of the items that were brought up. There were a number of questions that were asked as well by both consumers and legislators and others. So we felt like we had to go ahead and provide you that information to the best of our ability. I do apologize. I sent the original presentation to everybody, and then there was one slide that was out of place. So my apologies. I made a mistake. Transposing it. So Chandra, if we can move to the next one, please. So a couple of the questions we're going to deal with is industry standards. There were a number of them. Rick, I think you had a question about this too. I will tell you that we went ahead and consulted with some outside groups, NARTS, RESNA, and so forth, and others, and we did not find any industry standards that deal specifically with the questions from the consumers. Okay, there are other industry standards. I think Jeff had brought something up about RESNA at the last one. But nothing that specifically addressed that. We did talk to both the companies. They do have an internal standard of a minimum of one tech per ATP. Okay.
Wayne, I don't want to interrupt your presentation because I'd like to wait to the end, but actually that was one. I don't understand the one tech per ATP. I think what you're saying is there's no industry standard for consumer to technician, but I think I may be a little confused by the difference between a tech and an ATP.
Okay, and that's completely understandable, Bev. You don't deal with it every day. An ATP is an assistive technology professional. They're the individuals that go out and work to evaluate the consumer when they need equipment and so forth. They are different than a technician who works on the repair aspect of it. So the ATP has a relationship. They're also part of the team that scripts out the equipment. That's usually a doctor, a therapist, and the ATP. The ATP is really the equipment expert in dealing with what the consumer will need to meet their goals. Does that work for you, Beverly?
Okay, thank you. Yep, perfect.
All right. Another question that came up on this one, I think from Senator Samara, when ordering multiple parts, are they all ordered at the same time? They are. Okay, so we don't sit and wait and order different ones. Okay, they are ordered. Okay, now there are some issues on manufacturability, so they may not ship at the same time, but we do order them. Okay, it's literally just going in and pressing the button and getting those purchase orders placed. I would also remember, please, folks, that on a lot of the complex, on the really heavy complex chairs, okay, those have multiple manufacturers. I will tell you, in my experience, the one that I dealt with many years ago had 22 different manufacturers of the part. It was very complex. So, but again, that's one of the issues, but they are addressed. Okay. I think from slide 11, you guys asked about you didn't understand where those percentages are coming on, and you asked what was it based on. Both companies, it was based on revenue, not profit, for both of the companies. Next. So another question that came up is how many actual customers in each company servicing the categories of equipment. So we have put it down there. NSM's totals. PWC is power wheelchair, just in case anyone knows. MWC is a manual wheelchair. Other could be a number of other things. New Motion, I think, includes shower chairs in other. That's why they have a bigger number. But there's a lot of other products out there. It's not just power wheelchairs and manual wheelchairs. There's gait trainers, there's standards, and so forth. So they group those all together. Next. Okay, so we were asked about the percentages of the time that the parts are in stock, and we had shared. Look, there's different types of parts. There are parts that are common parts that we do keep in stock, and these are all the ones that we talked about. Batteries is the number one part typically for power wheelchairs. Those are kept in stock. Chargers, arm pads, specific complex rehab chairs, no, because again, they have to be ordered to fit the consumer. You may need a longer one, you may need a wider one, and so forth. Seat belts in various sizes are also kept in stock. Basic headrests are kept in stock, but as we talked about before, there's a lot of different complex rehab headrests that are out there as well. Casters as well for basic manual chairs are also kept in stock. Complex rehab casters are really more model specific based on size, where the person wants to go, and so forth. So those need to be ordered, okay? As we've stated before, the majority of custom rehab parts must be ordered from the manufacturer. And again, if it's in stock, the average shipping lead time is about 3 to 5 days. All right. Now, other custom rehab parts, okay, are going to require longer lead times. Custom cushions. We sometimes have to take a standard cushion and cut it up. We sometimes have to actually do a mold system for someone and develop a cushion off of that. It's not off the shelf. Okay, anything that's off the shelf usually can be kept in stock relatively well, but all the customized stuff cannot. Custom backs is another. Okay, now there's been a lot of talks about joystick. Now I do have good news. Okay, it's presently clearing up. We are seeing that clearing up. Okay, but because in the summer and spring of 2023 they were back ordered 4 to 5 months, and that caused a huge backlog of the repair orders. Because you got to remember, we can't. If we don't get the joystick, we can't repair the overall chair. So, again, this is what caused a big part of the joystick. But the good news is it is starting to clear up, which is great for everybody. Next. How many repair requests in Connecticut are being fulfilled each month? You've seen the number both from New Motion and NSM. They do give you the in-shop numbers and in the home, okay? Now, please remember, seasonality is an issue in this industry, and it does skew these numbers by a per monthly basis. Okay, December is typically a very busy month because most people are trying to get their orders in prior to the end of the year, because that following year they have deductibles and so forth. We see an uptick definitely in September when kids are starting to go back to school. So there's no straight number. It does fluctuate like this. As you can see, though, it's about, when you look at in the home, it's 80% for New Motion, 86% for NSM, so about 83% overall, and about, I'd probably say 16 to 17 for in-shop repairs, okay?
Wayne,
analysis.
hold on.
Yes.
Oh, okay, wait, forget it. I'm sorry. Lisa and I have a hard copy of the different ordered slides, so we just wanted to just look on your.
Yeah.
Keep going.
Beverly and Senator Samara, again, my apologies for that. That was just my issue. So
It's okay. Don't
uh,
worry.
the trending analysis is we are delivering more repaired equipment than we are receiving. Okay, so that indicates the backlog is starting to come down. Okay, next. So this question came out of the 14 texted in for each company. Okay, wanted to let you know that all 28, both of them, so we combined it, both companies are all located in Connecticut and all full-time permanent employees. Now we need to bring up the fact that two things: technician attrition is averaging about 35%. Okay, folks, it's not an easy job. It's a tough job. They are going out to the person's home. They're having to deal with it. As I've stated before, we got to get the right person. It's just not, do you have the skills? Do you have the temperament? We want a person with empathy. We want a person that cares about people. We don't want jerks. We're not going to hire those people. Okay. So the attrition is high. It's also something that we have to train people on. I will tell you, it takes about 3 months to identify, interview, and hire a technician. That's up from pre-COVID days. I think that's across the board for any industry. Okay. And also it's about 2 months to train them. We don't just throw them out there. There are a lot of different processes and procedures we got to go over. There's a lot of different equipment they need to be trained on. And again, we can't just throw somebody out there without any type of training. And that typically, just to get them ready to go out in the field or to work in shop, it takes about 2 months. Next. Of the 28 technicians identified, how many are regularly in the field assessing and servicing CRT? Okay. On average, we have about 4 to 6 of them in the shop, again, depending on the shop demand, which is part seasonality, but also demand. If we get a lot of people that are coming in, want to come in for repair, we're going to have more there. The remaining are, however, in the field. Now, please understand the in-shop techs are doing a lot of things. Okay. Their responsibilities are, they are receiving and QCing parts and also receiving and QCing new equipment. Okay. They do evaluate and repair equipment picked up from patients' homes. Sometimes we go to their home and we can't fix it. It could be a very heavy power chair that we need a lift on, that we have to bring it back to the shop in order to lift it up so we can work on it without somebody getting hurt. Some of these folks also are the ones doing those remote evaluations. Okay. So we want to have those available to get those done as soon as possible. A number of, as we talked about, do the repairing and fitting of consumers who come to the store. That's important that we have the right number of techs there to take care of the consumer demand within the store or in the location. They also configure custom parts for consumer equipment and repairs. Again, folks, if you're bringing in 4 to 5 different parts, you got to put that together. You got to configure it. Okay, so that does take some time. And there are other duties as well. Next. Okay. How many repair requests are currently unfulfilled? As you can see, we broke it out by company. NuMotion has 740 outstanding service orders for 622 customers, and NSM has 687 for 445. So you can see there are customers that we have that have multiple service requests. And you'll see some data here in a little bit that shows that we do have to also, sometimes when we get a first order, 27% of the time, we get that going and another thing pops up. So casters could go down, but we could get a call for batteries. Okay. So again, this is where you get multiple orders for the consumer. Next. Okay. How many new repairs are being requested in Connecticut each month? Now, we looked at this again. Like I said, seasonality is going to be an issue. On average, it's about 70 to 85 per month per company. Okay, so be aware of that. We wanted to just show you, but that was consistent among both of them. This is a big one. Senator Seminara, we talked about incorrect parts and so forth. So we want to address this issue. I will tell you, and I'm going to turn this over to Gary and Diane in a second to deal with their specifically talking to you about their items. Okay, and then Seth is going to talk about the manufacturers. Okay, now, I will tell you, the software systems are not as specific as pulling these categories like incorrect. A lot of times we get a part back, we send it back. There's no button to click that says it's an incorrect order. So we are somewhat limited on the data we can get. There are, though, you will see that human error is a big part of the problems. So Gary, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you if you want to start, and then Diane will go ahead and talk about it.
Yeah, we're trying to pull this data, and we've gone back to our purchasing people and said, can we identify, actual part orders that are reorders? But they can't just push the button and get and generate the number. We have to go back and do some manual checking and manual sorting through some of the data. So it's going to take us a little bit longer to get the absolute number, but we are trying to get that for you.
Diane?
Yeah, and just to kind of like when we looked at this too, what I put in for our numbers looking at it was like added valuation the first time our technician or someone goes out and reevaluates. And what we do is we check and see if what they put in had to be changed out, like it was the wrong part. That's how we were tracking those. There's also a manual process for the manufacturing side where it takes a little bit more data gathering that we need to kind of get. It's a lot. It's more of a manual process. Is if we did place an order, but then what we got from the manufacturer had to be sent back due to an error. And that's another trending system that we're trying to pull up. And it's not exactly an easy thing to pull. But on average, when you're looking at this, at least up to 2% of the time is a human error. That might be a transcription. Like someone, like for the example that was brought up last week for us, the ATP, 18 by 20 versus 20 by 18. Well, that's a transcription error for the cushion. So that had to be sent back. Sometimes if we get something from the part number that we ordered and looked at that was on the chair changed and we weren't aware of it, that might be an error. So then we'll send those back. So those are kind of hard to differentiate, but we're trying to do a manual process to track those moving forward. It just, unfortunately, I'll be honest, it takes someone to go back into that order and then make sure put a check mark off on their box saying shipping error, and go back to that. So it's a lot of manual processes.
Yeah. So, and before we move to Seth to talk a little bit about the manufacturers, as we shared with you before, both companies have invested money into better inventory and parts systems. And this is one area that both Diane and Gary have identified to their management that is an area that they need to start tracking more accurately. So, okay. Seth, do you want to just talk to him about the manufacturers? Please remember something. Both Diane and Gary were speaking about Connecticut. The manufacturers do not track things on a state-by-state basis, so they're sharing national numbers with you. Seth, could you please address that?
Yeah, sure. So the information on the slide shows 0.71% of all part orders are incorrect. Those are incorrect part orders that are tracked within our tech service system. We estimate that within the system that we track, that accounts for about 80% of the total. There are other ways that providers can order parts from us as a manufacturer that do not result in a phone call into our tech service team, which are the numbers that are reflected here. They can use technology and order direct without talking to one of our tech service individuals. So any of those errors would not be reflected in here. But again, we believe this accounts for about 80% within our system. And just to give you a further breakdown on that 0.71 number, so that represents 962 wrong orders or incorrect parts that are shipped of a total of 134,395 for year-to-date 2023.
Next, Chandra. Thank you. Next, Chandra. Thank you. So look, we know there's human error involved in this. We're just trying to give you guys an idea of some of the reasons that these incorrect parts. We have to get better. Okay. The 0.71 seems very low. We got to get better because it has an effect on the consumer. We heard you. Absolutely. Okay. There is definitely a lot of tech errors. Part of the challenge that we're dealing with right now is our current tech population is averaging about less than 2 years. Okay. And it usually that an internal kind of industry understanding is it takes about 2 years where a tech has really seen a lot of different issues and dealt with a lot of different experiences and how to repair things to really be a fully trained tech on someone that we consult with quite a bit. Now, unfortunately, 50% of our technicians' experience is under 2 years. As we said before, we've had issues hiring and keeping people. That's why the average attrition rate is about 35% for both companies. Now, the companies are offsetting that by increasing salaries. They've also offered retention bonuses. We want to keep good people. And we are offering up additional training to speed up tech proficiency. And studies also show, look, more training leads to employees being happier and so forth. So training is twofold. We want skill level, but we want to keep our good people. There are definitely manufacturing picking errors, okay? We'll talk a little bit about that. There are definitely purchasing entry errors. I transposed a slide, okay? You have a person, and I'm notorious for it, so ordering a 2018 cushion, they order an 1820. There is a difference, okay? There are times, though, consumer chairs have been made or have been modified. You have a number of consumers on here, very good with their chairs. They know what they want, and they'll make a modification, okay? And that's fine because it makes them more comfortable, or works for them. We may not be aware of that. We'll also tell you when consumers do change insurance, which has happened, people will go to Medicare, or maybe the employer has United and they decide they're going to switch over to Humana. We have no history of that chair, of that new consumer, if we've never dealt with them. So we're kind of flying blind a little bit on what any changes to that, and what is the history of that chair. As we talked about, there are multiple manufacturers for those large percentage of complex chairs, and some of them can be very high. There are modifications to the chair after initial delivery, and so forth. And the sheer number of SKUs is anywhere from 75 to 85,000. And Chandra, can you pull up one of those attachments that I sent you? I just want to show you guys some of the schematics that are there. You look at the 75,000 to 85,000 number, and you're thinking, come on, Wayne, you're kind of exaggerating a little bit. It's not. I mean, it's literally down to bolts and so forth. And the schematics that we're going to show you real quick will show you all the different parts that go on there. And again, the more complex the chair is, the more parts that are on there. So again, not passing the buck at all. We have to get better, period. But I just wanted to share with you the challenges that we have. So here's one from Pride. It's called the Quantum 6. It's one of their chairs. It's their own manual. This is out there. Chandra, if you could go to start at page 7, if you could just kind of skim down. And guys, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, okay? But I mean, you can see here's just, some of the basics. This is a rather basic chair. Chandra, if you just go down a little bit, you can keep kind of moving along, and I'll just keep commenting and so forth. But you can see here, these are just a basic chair that's out there. If you go to the next slide or the next page, my apologies. Okay. Oh, thank you. Okay. This is just a little bit more of a modification or an understanding. If you go to the next one, here's just an example of the charger and a power module. Okay. With all those parts in there and just some of the basic electronics. Again, folks, this is a basic one. If you'll go to slide 11 and slide 13, Chandra. No, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. When I talked about the slide, I meant that one. Sorry, Chandra. I didn't mean to mix you up here. Okay. Here's just another example with a basic seating system and so forth. You can see, you could scroll down to 13. You got the foot plate there. That's a pretty standard chair. Here's just some other ones and so forth. You can just see the number of parts that are in there. If you'll just keep going down, here's the number 14. Okay. They literally break it down part by part. You can even see some of the bolts and so forth. And then 16 and 18, if you could, Chandra. Here's just, I mean, this is a simple arm attachment with all the different parts that are there. You can see that. And if you go to 18, okay, here's just another one. That's a simple foot plate, folks. So when you start getting into elevated leg rests, but you also start getting into power modules, the number of parts probably quadruples or even quintuples. Okay. Sandra, would you do me one favor? I just want to show something to the folks because this is something that both the consumers and the industry agreed upon. If you could go to slide 25, not slide on this thing, 25 to 29. There are preventive maintenance. Jonathan, I hope I'm not speaking out of turn, but I think we both agree that preventive maintenance needs to be part of the solution. Okay. There are preventive maintenance guidelines by every manufacturer. You can just keep scrolling down a little bit, Chandra. So there are specifics on this, on what needs to be done, what should be evaluating. And this is beyond any issues that may pop up, that is a repair that is needed. This is just basic maintenance. Folks, you saw the schematics, you understand the mechanics and the electronics that go into this. There's a lot of moving parts here, so we've got to make sure that those things are maintained. We want to stop issues before they become emergencies, okay? So again, we sent that out. Please feel free to peruse it and look at it and you'll see. Chandra, thank you. I appreciate it. Sorry to miss you out. If we can go back to the slides, I appreciate it. So
Wayne, can I add something before you move on? About the sort of variety of chairs. If you just look at all the consumers that are on this panel, every one of them has a different product, and they're different configurations. They were all individually configured for these folks. So that's what makes it even more complex in trying to order parts and things. Everyone's different. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. There were questions brought up about in-shop repairs, and again, we completely understand where the consumers are coming about, but there have been investments made to make those in-shop locations better. There is additional equipment on hand for safe transfers. There's lifts and there's mat tables. We sometimes also, not sometimes, we encourage the consumer to bring in their sling from their home lift if they need it, so we can adjust that. There are mat tables for them to transfer to while we're working on the chair. There are ADA accessible bathrooms are available at all the locations. Now, another one that was brought up that I remember too is years ago, people would help the individual out of the chair, exit the chair. Unfortunately, there were looks like some incidents, and the insurers came back to us and they were very adamant that if you don't, you really can't do that. If someone gets hurt, then you're liable. As we know, we live in a litigious environment. Okay, and industry insurance to their to what they're dealing with, they're saying we have to limit that type of liability. It's not that we don't want to do it; we are limited, and again, not limited. We're not allowed to due to the industry, the insurance companies. I would also tell you that the accreditation agencies, and every one of these folks has got to be accredited, just like any other healthcare, has very strict limits on what our staff can do with assisting consumers. It's not that we don't want to do it. It's just we do have limitations on that. And this is for both folks in shop and also for in the home repairs. Now, typically, they may have somebody help them or they have the ability to transfer out. But again, it's not that we don't want to do it. We just simply can't. Okay, next. So we wanted to, Gary's going to go ahead and talk about the service order process. There was just numbers thrown out in our first presentation. I don't think it clearly detailed the interaction and so forth. So I'm going to let Gary go ahead and address this particular slide. Gary?
Great, thanks, Wayne. And look, I know we talked about the delivery times, the intake to delivery or completion, but I think what I wanted to try and illustrate is that some of that stuff happens parallel. It's not a totally linear process, meaning that the step starts after the other. There are some steps that are done in unison. For instance, we take the intake, and then insurance verification happens simultaneously. We also request docs at the same time, and funding can happen. A lot of the pre-funding can happen, kind of overlapping the other steps here. While we're waiting for funding, we generally go ahead and we'll evaluate the situation. Funding can't be completed until we do the evaluation. We get part numbers, we get pricing, we get all the critical components and then we have to go back to the insurer sometimes, like Connecticut Medicaid for the prior authorization. So funding moves along sort of. We probably could have extended that funding arrow across a couple more bars here, but I just wanted to kind of illustrate that the process is not just linear, where one thing happens after the other. Every chance we get, we try to take days out of the process by doing things in parallel or things simultaneously. The order to receive parts. The thing that Wayne did mention is that number is coming down. Receipt to delivery is coming down. We are, as we can, adding additional resources to try and focus on those two aspects of this process. But you see, those are the longest parts of it. And I'm not justifying, I'm not saying it's correct. I'm just saying it is what it is, and we're trying to fix it.
Okay.
Thank you, Wayne.
Thanks, Gary. Next slide, please. So there were some surveys shared on the previous one by the consumers. We also are required to do consumer surveys. It's part of our accreditation process. It's also part of our ability to become better at what we do. They are required to do them per their accreditation. They do not do them individually. They hire outside agencies to do these. So these are not employees calling up people. So we just want to show you a couple of examples or an example of some of the surveys. And I'm going to turn this over to Diane to go ahead. Now, the number of responses, just so you know, that we have year to date, it's through September, is 325 year to date. So Diane, next.
Thanks, Wayne. Yeah, so just to let the team know, Suppress Gainey is a third-party administrator for our surveys that go out to the field. If you go to the next slide, please. So this is just, I wanted to show the whole company because I know this is going to come up. What are you doing nationally? So I gave last year's goals. We always want 87% satisfaction is what our target is. We haven't been hitting it. As you see, I have 2022 above, and in current year 2023. This is looking at in comparison year to date. Just what our targets, what our averages are across the nation. That's over 1,000 when you see represented here. When you get to and when you get to the next slide for Connecticut proper, I wanted to drill it down. So if you can go to the next slide, Chandra. Excuse me. So, what were some of our highest rankings? What's our most improved categories that we're working on? And what is our lowest? Because I'm sure you guys are going to ask for this. So when you look at, this is from the 325 year to date. This is for my New England market. Keep in mind, New England is including Massachusetts, Connecticut, and then a northern corridor a little bit. But when I went and pulled and looked at, tried to get specific for Connecticut, I would make about a 5 to 10 point adjustments on these downward when I looked at it by state. I had to still get state specific more each month over month, and I can share that in the next follow-up. But this gives you some ideas of where we're at and the feedback we're getting. And to the points that Wayne was making up, this is something that we're constantly working on, and we make it a point to every single customer that we asked get sent surveys. We know the percentages are not always as high as we'd like, but we actually do get some. I probably would say we average for the Connecticut market about 25 to 28 surveys a month do come back to us, just to give you some idea on the volume.
Thank you, Diane. So, regarding also consumers surveys, providers also have been serving the consumers about their in-shop experience. I mean, I think all of you would understand if we're going to make investments in areas, we want to make sure it matters to the consumers. And, again, we're not going to put in multi-million dollars for something that's not going to matter. And as we've always stated, and I had to highlight this in boldness, we've never stated that all consumers must utilize in-shop repairs exclusively. A number of you have shared that you can't do it. Absolutely. And we will continue to offer in the home. It has to be. It's just that, as we shared before, the numbers prove that in-shop is the fastest method to get repairs. We can do 7.5 on average repairs a day in shop compared to 4.5 in the home due to travel, traffic, and all of those issues. Okay. We just believe consumers should have choices on how they want to have their equipment repaired. So I'm going to turn this back to Gary to talk to you about some of the services they've done as far as that he has available that's been presented here. So Gary, next slide, Chandra, please.
Thanks. Thanks, Mike. Yeah, this is just a little look, and I want to address that downward turn at the end, because that's November. The month is not complete yet, so the numbers haven't for the full month. That's only up till yesterday. So please, we didn't all of a sudden, jump off the cliff down with our quality. This is, you can see, since we've introduced in-shop service, you can see we're averaging around 4.5, 4.5 out of 5 on the in-shop experience. And, this is consistent. I mean, we've seen this all along. You can see the survey counts have come up nicely. We're in the 400 to 500 in the survey count range. So, I think we're showing that there is some there's some subset of consumers who would like to come into our locations, and we're going to continue to offer it. The consumers have the right to have service in their home, but we are going to continue to offer this for those who want to come in. We can move to the next slide, please. And this is just a look at our progress with in-shop in Rocky Hill. When we first started, we were doing 7.8 to 7% of in-shop appointments. We now are up into the 20% range at the right-hand end. So again, we have seen an increase in this, and it gives us, as we talked about, gives us more capacity to take care of more customers in a shorter time frame. And I respect the consumers on this call that they didn't have a good experience or they don't like the experience, and we will continue to serve them in their homes. Next slide. And this is just an additional slide. This has nothing to do with the surveys, but this shows kind of our overall progress on service events. You can see that we are trending nicely up as far as the red line, which is our back end events or actual final deliveries. You can see that we, on a month by month basis, we are increasing the number of closed orders. The light blue line is front end events or new evals. You can see that is, while coming up slightly, it is well below the upper line, which means we are starting to collect, to catch up on some of our backlog. The overall OIP and unique orders or unique customers is still pretty high, and we are going to make every effort to continue to knock that down, but we are making progress. Next slide, please.
So
Wayne, I think that's back to you.
Yes, sir. Thank you. So this is a question I think that came, Representative Smith, I believe you did it. If I misquoted, my apologies, but we tried to model how, if we added additional techs in, and also model what would happen if we shifted just a little bit over to in the home and also remote repairs. It was very complex. I'm pretty good with Excel, folks. I've done some of this, but there were so many variables that we had to throw into it that every time it did, it went crazy. Examples such as consumer cancellations. How do you account for that? We do get about 12 to 15% of the time we get a cancellation for the consumer. It happens. Okay, they have something came up, they can't come in, or maybe they have something going on at work, so we have to deal with that. Seasonal fluctuations is another one. Parts availability, and also what parts are going to be needed. How do we do that? So, Representative, my apologies. I was hoping to have that for you today. I'm just telling you, it's very complex. I will tell you again. We'll go back to each new tech after the hiring period. If they're out in the field, it's 4.5, so it will speed it up. There's no doubt. But again, if we can move some of those into the shop, it will speed it up faster. And guys, I don't think there has to be a one or the other. I mean, could we possibly do both and speed it up even faster? And as I said before, we're always going to support in the home repairs for any consumer that needs it. Okay, we want to be as transparent as possible, and we want to share that in the shop is going to be quicker. It's just math. So we'll go from there. So Chandra, I believe that's it at this point.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, thanks, Wayne. I think Rick's had his hand up for a while, and let's just spend some time answering questions about this, but I want to thank the industry for that. Was a pretty thorough presentation. So Rick, and then Senator Seminara. So go ahead, Rick.
So I just want to say thank you very much. Yesterday I received almost all of my new equipment. I got my back, I got my smart drive, but the solid insert for the cushion was left at the shop. The tech came by this afternoon shortly and dropped it off at my house. He made up for it. Thank you very much. So I'm just wondering who loads the vans? I mean, does the driver check the parts that he has to pick up, or does someone else just leave it on the dock and they pick it up? And then if it's all there, it's great. And if it's not, the tech doesn't know about it.
I can answer that question, Rick, for you. It's up to the tech to load his van and check his orders every day. So that was on the tech. He didn't do a quality check.
That's okay. He made up for it, and that's all anybody can ask. Mistakes happen. I made one the other day. I sent a 2 thumbs up to the wrong email. How many? So there's fewer in-shop repairs than there are in-home repairs, if I read that correctly. So my question would be, you keep mentioning the backlog of the joysticks. The joysticks are now coming in. So now the question would be, how are you going to get the techs out there quick enough to relieve all those people who need joysticks? So the question would be, if you have nobody in the shop coming in scheduled for repairs, do you reschedule your in-shop techs to go out on the road to possibly help catch up on that backlog for the joysticks?
Yes, we are doing that. We are also bringing some of our remote techs in fact, I've got remote techs coming into Rocky Hill this week to help catch up some things. We're utilizing remote techs all over the country as our remote capacity, wanes a little bit and we don't need it quite as much. We move those people into the field. So we do use surge resources. We're using seating techs, the guys and gals that usually go out with our ATPs and do final deliveries on completed chairs. We're utilizing some of them out in the field. In fact, we're utilizing 2 of those in Rocky Hill right now to help kind of catch up some of those backlogs. So we are adding more resources.
And another question, I understand if somebody modifies their chair and doesn't tell you guys about it, whether BRS had done it to modify it to fit in a vehicle, but really, are those really significant numbers to cause all these other delays? How many of those or percentage of those modifications? I'm out of my chair too, but I don't change anything that's going to require a different part or anything like that. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but I mean, you bring that up a lot. So does it happen a lot? And what is a lot?
I'll give you an example because, I was in the field as an ATP for 25 years. And what I did see a lot of times is when we provided a chair, sometimes, let's use a pediatric client as an example. We would order 90-degree footrests for the chair from the manufacturer. Okay. We get out there and 90 degrees footrest when extended don't allow for any growth sometimes. So, we measure as best we can. So we ended up reordering 70-degree footrests. Okay. So that we could have more room for growth built into the chair. Well, the manufacturer doesn't always tag that when we order the other footrest. They don't correct the serial number always to show that we changed those. So it's not just that you or some other party does that change. We could have done the change. And if we don't go back and check every single order for that consumer when we go to do a repair, it's possible that we missed that. And we will go back and order 90-degree footrests. Okay. And that's something we need to get better on. We as an industry need to try and figure out how to track that. But that's one example how that happens. I think Wayne mentioned that, there are times when we will take on a customer and they got their chair through another provider. Okay. Like if somebody, like we've already said, there are a lot of companies that have gone out of the business or sold or done whatever, but we only have records going back to chairs that we provided. And so sometimes, again, if we call on the serial number, we only get what the manufacturer has record of. And so it does happen. I'm not saying that's the only reason there are parts error. Human error is the biggest driving force there.
Well, I appreciate the admitting of that. So thank you.
Yeah.
One last question for me. So, oh, I just had it and I forgot all about it again. Okay, I can't seem to understand the reason why it's so much faster. And by the way, it's only 3 per tech per day. That it would be quicker to do in-shop repairs, including the fact that parts are being misordered, shipping delays. So the only time I see that would make it quicker would be the amount of time you have for scheduling techs, the number of techs you have to go out. So
Transportation.
for it to only be 3
I'm sorry.
per day per tech of a difference, I don't see it too much of a hassle to just shift it the other way to get more out to the people in home.
Rick, you've had techs come to your home. I don't know how far you are from our Rocky Hill office, but I envision it's probably a 20 or 30-minute drive.
45, yeah.
45 minutes. Okay.
Yeah.
That's so add that to a tech's day through 4 or 5 stops in an 8-hour day. And there's a big component of the difference in time.
No, I get that. So the solution would be more techs on the road and fewer in the shop. Because most people, if you're showing 80% of the people are getting repairs at home because they can't get there.
Well, that's assuming
we're talking about kind of like supply and demand, and I'm no economic guy.
Okay, I'm going to stand by my statement. Yeah, we if we added more techs, we had more vehicles. That's more fuel costs. That's more other costs that we can't bear. And so
one last question. I don't mean to cut you off, but all of these returns. So my guy had to come out to see me twice. That's an expense for your errors. So how much of all this extra expense is caused by errors for your on the road techs? So it's not
I appreciate that. If I can fix human error, if I can fix human error.
But that's part of your losses. So we can't just blame it on, the supply chains, and it's just overall expensive. If it was done right the first time, you would be losing less, is my point.
I'm not going to argue that fact with you. I agree with you on that fact. If we all did it right the first time, it saves us all everything. I can appreciate that. And,
I'm
we're
just
doing
bringing up
everything
for
we
possible
can.
solutions. I'm not meaning to hammer anything. All right. So
Thank you, Rick.
thank you.
Thanks, Rick. All right. So Senator Seminara is gonna what's the word? Defer to Jonathan, who has his hand up. Go ahead, Jonathan.
Hey, thank you. Thank you, Wayne and Gary, for the presentation. I just had a couple follow-up questions. So you mentioned you have an internal standard of 1 ATP to technician, correct?
Minimum.
No.
So when we hear that New Motion and NSM have 14 permanent in-state employees, is it safe to assume that half of those are ATPs who are doing evaluations and half are technicians? Or could you help us understand the breakdown of that?
We didn't include ATPs, Jonathan. That doesn't include ATPs. That's just technicians. That's people with a technician title.
So those are the people who are doing the repairs. Okay. And do we know how many do technicians do assessments ever? Or is that just purely ATPs who do that?
Seating technicians, service technicians do not. Okay, seating technicians can do an assessment for a new chair. They can also do repairs, right?
Okay.
So, it's we're getting into semantics about what technicians do what. Production technicians do assemblies, but they they can do repairs as well. Okay. So ATPs just do fittings and deliveries of new product.
Okay, so for the repair assessments, because the only reason I'm asking is trying to understand, what's the staff level available to help with assessments and repairs for those. So to be clear, it's the 14 techs who are responsible for both of those actions, right?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
And sometimes the seating technicians, you said, which are in addition to those.
No, seating technicians were in that 14.
Oh, okay. Great, thank you. And do you have, I believe they're mentioned in passing, but what were the total number of respondents for the surveys that were shown?
325 year to date for the NSM one. So that's through September. And as Diane said, I think they're getting about 26 to 28 responses every month.
Was there a new motion survey as well?
Our numbers are similar in response rate. Our surveys are a little bit different than theirs, the questions that are asked and things. But surveys, getting people to complete surveys is a challenge. It's
Yeah.
So,
But so is this, do you know the total number that was presented for new motions?
I don't have it right. I have to go back
Okay.
and look. Sorry. I can email that to you.
Equivalent. Okay. All right. And then I appreciate, Wayne, when you said that why not do both, in shop and in home. And I want to be very clear, last week, we presented very hard against in shop. We are not opposed to in-shop repairs. What we are opposed to is in-shop repairs being prioritized both in marketing and as being presented as a preference. We many of us use in-shop and we think it should be available, and we appreciate your efforts to make it available. But from the consumer standpoint, we want in-shop and in-home to be equally available. That's what our whole push is. We're not trying to get rid of in-shop, but we think they need to be equally available. And that's why our whole emphasis, especially on that really important question, which I appreciate, the complexity of getting an answer to, how many techs would you need to be able to equalize the time for assessments and repairs, whether it's in shop or in home, so that's the perspective from the consumers on that. And yeah, so those are my comments for the moment. So thank you.
Thank you for the clarification, Jonathan. We do appreciate it.
Madam Chair, may I make one clarification statement, please?
Yes.
I just want to be clear to everybody on this call. We do not get paid until service is complete. And sometimes we don't get paid till 90 or 120 days after the completion of that service. So there is no incentive for us to delay service in whether it's in home or in shop or whatever. I just want to be clear, when people start talking about, we're trying to we're basing everything off profits. We're basing it off, we need to be a growing business. And the only way we grow is to do more revenue. And to do more revenue, we have to complete more service. So I just want to dispel the rumor here that we are fictitiously trying to delay service. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Okay, Senator Seminara has a number of questions now.
Okay, thanks. Thank you both for, again, a very comprehensive answers to the questions, but of course that elicits more questions from me. So one of the questions or what I just need clarity because I do not, I want to make sure I understand something. So when you have a complex chair and you said we have many different vendors of a complex chair and you know that the orders there are many different orders. So I just want some clarity. Are you ordering for a complex chairs from different vendors or is it one vendor, many different parts?
Wayne, can I take this?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, Senator Seminara, any chair, for instance, maybe Rick's chair or Jonathan's chair, can have parts from 5 or 6 different manufacturers. They can have a headrest from Whitmire. The base could be from Quantum. The seating can be from, AES, and any number of different manufacturers can have components on one chair. When we order the parts, if they're with different manufacturers, we order them simultaneously from all manufacturers.
Okay. I appreciate that clarification because I was under the impression that, I go back to my own personal, my daughter has a chair. I don't think it's that much of a complex chair, but I was not aware that there's 4 different vendors that you have to order from for one chair. So that gives a little bit of clarity to the complex nature of having to place an order and why orders come in from various sources at different times. And I'm assuming that you wait until all the parts are in before you go out and do a repair.
Yes, we do.
Okay.
And prior to COVID, we would pre-schedule, meaning when we placed the order for the products, we kept track of how long, delivery times were from specific manufacturers. And we would try and set the delivery date up ahead of time. With COVID, when we couldn't have surety of when we were going to receive the product, we had to wait until all products were in before we would schedule delivery. So that was part of the the receipt to delivery delays. We're starting now, since we have expected ship dates that are accurate for manufacturers, we're starting to pre-schedule deliveries.
Which is what you did pre-COVID?
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Well, I'm sure that will help with backlog. My other question, and I know that, this has been, we're kind of going over this over and over because I guess I too get stuck along with the consumers about this. So you're telling me that you keep 4 to 6 techs in-house on a daily basis, correct? Out of the 14?
That's out of the 28.
Well, it's 28 from 2 different
No, 14 for both. The presentation
14 for
represented both.
Yeah. 14 in each place, you're saying?
Correct.
Okay. So that's what I'm saying. So you're saying to me, you're keeping 4 to 6 out of 28 or 4 to 6 out of 14?
4 to 6 out of 28.
Out of 28. Okay. Okay. So that's for both companies, you're saying. So
Yes.
So maybe in each company you have 2 or 3 or 4 that are
Yes.
in-house.
Yes.
Correct. This is between the 2 branches. You may have 2 up to 4 techs depending in the branch. And then the rest, and minimum 8 are out in the field at all times doing repairs.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for clarifying that.
You betcha.
So I just want to again ask your operations in-house. Do you have walk-ins? Do you have people that just walk in with no appointment that you leave a tech in the facility for to deal with that? Or basically the techs that are in your facilities, I know you said they have other jobs, they have to inventory parts and all of those things. So I'm just trying to see, do you have walk-ins or are all repairs that are done in-house are scheduled to be done?
We do have people that just come into the location without calling, or they just show up. And so that's a small number. But you know, if the in-shop tech is already scheduled with another customer, we'll make a production tech or a warehouse tech or someone else available to try and do, you know, service that other individual.
But by and large, you have appointments that are set appointments, correct?
Yes. Yes.
And I'm just throwing this out there as a question. So you said from time to time you have cancellations, and that happens because you know, something arises either with the consumer or whatever, that you have a cancellation. Do you ever send your people out unexpectedly, meaning that the people who were scheduled for in-house, is there ever times where they can unexpectedly try to address that backlog or go out to the consumer, you know, try to call a consumer that might have been waiting for a while, and you say, oh, we have time today, do you happen to be home? I'm just wondering, does that ever happen? Can that
Yes.
happen?
Yes.
Yes.
Does
And
that
there's times to add too, Senator, if someone does pop in the office, and even like to Gary said, the tech's working on something, if it's something that we can help fix really quickly, or something that they can hold on a moment, we will try to. If it's something that we know is going to be a covered repair, not an issue, we'll sometimes what I call credit accept something and get it. So it varies, but the majority of the time they are scheduling those appointments because we want to make sure we have what they need when they come in.
Okay, great. And then 2 more questions. Can we expect more accurate data from both companies? I know you said you were trying to pull it together regarding the errors, the order errors that are made, and you did provide data on a national level today. And although that's helpful, it's not truly that helpful. So I was wondering
Yeah, I can say for the error rates for Connecticut for the evaluation at time of evaluation, error rate for Connecticut specifically, that was correct at 1.8 to 2% on our tax due to first initial error. The data that's going to be hard is the manufacturing that we sent over from us being the vendors or the provider to the manufacturer. That's a manual process. It's going to take quite a bit of time. We're doing that. I just know it's going to probably take me a couple of weeks to get all that data.
So you're saying when you send in an order and the manufacturer sends the wrong part, that's what
Correct.
you're
That's the data.
Okay.
That's a manual process for us. We have to kind of pull all those orders and look and see how many times we had to go back and forth.
Okay.
Senator Seminara, the numbers we gave you from the providers was Connecticut focused. The ones from the manufacturers, unfortunately, are national. Simply, they don't track it by state. So.
Okay. All right. Thank you for clarifying. And then just one other thing, you know, we heard from consumers last week that your facility did not have ADA, or that your facilities were not they didn't have accessible bathrooms, and you're saying they do have accessible bathrooms. And I guess what I'm throwing out there for consideration, and certainly will be one of my recommendations as we continue to go forth, there are things that are ADA compliant, okay? But our ADA compliance has not been looked at in over a decade, okay? So something could be ADA compliant, but it's just not user friendly for the consumer. And I know there are people out there, and I'm not, you may have done this already, or maybe you just did it based on your own knowledge as people who work with people with disabilities. But there are people that you can hire to come out and do an assessment of your facility and determine not only ADA compliance, but usability for somebody with a disability, to ensure that it is usable for somebody. So you may have the correct door opening for a chair to get through to go to the bathroom, but can the chair turn and be maneuverable? And there's a lot that goes into it. And again, making your space not only compliant, but comfortable for people to have, who may need to sit there for 2, 3, 4 hours to have their chair fixed and then wait for transportation to go back to their home. So, that to me is like low hanging fruit. And that's going to be certainly something that I will talk to Representative Case and Beverly about in terms of, what are some things that can be done that are simple, that we don't have to legislate, and that really might make a customer's experience a whole lot better. So I'm just throwing that out there. So, because again, we have a consumer saying, I'm not able to use their bathroom, and you're saying, oh, well, our bathrooms are ADA compliant. So I'm trying to find out what the disconnect is. And
Senator, I can answer that. And I haven't been to my Rocky Hill facility in a few months. And I reached out to our staff up there. I said, when we did this, how did we set that up? And we met ADA standards. I agree. We could probably, go back and look at it from functionality and a usability standpoint. And I will commit to doing that.
that's
And
terrific.
ma'am-
I appreciate you saying that.
Senator
again,
Seminary,
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, ma'am, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I would also say we'd love to have you come to the location. Maybe Rick, maybe you could come. We'd love to hear from you. You tell us what would make you more comfortable. Okay. I mean, you're not afraid of telling us what you feel. I know that. Okay. But we would encourage you to come out, and we'll show you the location, and you can see we're always open to our best source of improvement is the consumer by far.
Perhaps we can do that together. I can
Great.
go with a consumer and we can do that together. And I would be more than happy to do that. And just kind of take a look at it. Again, I'm not a professional, but I know there are professionals out there that do this, and it might be a worthwhile investment to make. But I'll leave it at that, so I'm not consuming all the time. And I don't know if Representative Case has any questions.
Okay, thank you, Senator Seminara. Rick, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention, the Centers for Independent Living can make recommendations for accessibility as well.
Who is that, Rick? I'm sorry, you cut out.
Centers
Who's
for
that?
Independent Living.
Okay.
So,
For example, one of our executive directors, he's an expert in the ADA.
Thank you.
Did you answer the question already? Oh, okay. All right. My apologies.
I'm sorry, it was just a comment.
Oh, okay.
I put it in the chat as well.
I'm multitasking here. I actually had one question. I'm still trying to understand. So when you talk about the 14 techs per company, that's repair people. Does that mean then that each company also has 14 ATPs
No, ma'am.
staff?
No,
You
ma'am.
said
Remember, we said
The ratio was
service
1 to 1.
It would know it was minimum of 1 to 1, minimum of 1 to 1. So it does not mean that we have 14 ATPs. Diane, Gary, how many ATPs?
I have
you guys?
7. It's 2 to 1 ratio in Connecticut.
I
Gary?
have 6.
So you would like to have a 1 to 1, but you have 2 to 1.
No,
It
that's
will-
the minimum. For example, if we have a location that has 1 ATP, we definitely want 1 tech there to support that ATP. We happen to have more than that ratio in Connecticut because we have more techs than ATPs. So that's favorable.
Okay. And so the ATPs, I know Daryl's not here today, unfortunately, but so two questions. What is the process for ATP? Like, how do you become an ATP? And secondly, can ATPs also do repairs?
I'll answer the second question first. Yes, ATPs can do repairs. Because I was an ATP for 25 years, I can answer what it takes. You have to have at least 2 years of experience in the business with hands-on time with consumers. If you are a college graduate, you get some credit towards that. You also have to pass an exam that is presented by RESNA. There is the ATP exam, which is a pretty comprehensive exam on how to do the clinical and technical job. It also is very involved around funding and understanding funding opportunities in the funding environment. It's knowing all the various technologies that are available for people with disabilities and knowing how to apply those technologies. There is also an SMS, which is a seating and mobility specialist certification that can be added on to the ATP, which is a higher level certification that some ATPs go ahead and get, which makes them even more qualified to do seating and positioning. There are ATPs can also be in the academic environment and in other. Daryl, doesn't work for a supplier, but he's an ATP. He sat for the exam. But there are plenty of ATPs out in academia. Ohio State. A lot of facilities, a lot of academic facilities hire ATPs that are also therapists who specialize in seating and mobility provision. So it's a certification applied by the Rehab and Engineering Society of North America. The test is presented by them. They write the questions. It's separate from the industry, but they set the standards for code of ethics and best practices in how you go about providing seating and mobility products. The other side of this is there is no certification for service technicians. We are trying to develop that within the industry. And there are certain movements in the industry to make sure the technicians meet minimum requirements. But then again, that makes it even tougher to hire for. So we have to rely on our own training, our own ability to get technicians up to speed as quickly as possible. It does not do us any good, as Rick said, to have technicians go out making errors. So we're trying to do our best to minimize those errors. And so training is our biggest sort of weapon in that aspect. And I hope I answered your question about the ATP. I got a little long-winded there, though.
It was very,
apologize.
very thorough, Gary. I could never accuse you of not being thorough.
Long-winded, thorough, same thing.
Okay.
Sorry.
I want to leave time to talk a little bit about the survey tool that I want to recommend. And we are going to end at 1:15 today. But I see that Jonathan had your hand up again. Jonathan.
Oh, yes. Thank you. Just briefly, I wanted, you said that you do your own training for the service technicians. Do you have any states where you recruit disability organizations with wheelchair users to assist in that training?
Well, just to clarify, there's training we provide, then there's training the manufacturers provide. But I would welcome any disability organizations that would like to participate in training our techs. It will help with empathy and awareness and those aspects. We try and hire for a profile. We try to hire people who already have that personality of empathy and ability to work. I've hired some individuals who have gone out and done, repairs after, their training and we've let them go because they didn't have that empathy. They didn't have that ability to work with the customer and be able to fix the chair appropriately and with compassion. That is critical in our business. And, look, in any business, if you mistreat your customers, if you don't take care of your customers are going to go elsewhere. And, we try and set a standard. Unfortunately, we have not hit that standard, but we're working every day to get better. And so, yeah, I'd be happy to have our our technicians work with whoever you would like them to work with to get better.
And keep in mind too, we actually have, Jonathan and group, we have ATPs that are wheelchair users, that are in wheelchairs. So we do have some training and some of those things, like to what Gary said. We have worked with some associations to help develop some of our training. So that is out there. It's always an ongoing. Training's never enough, right? We're always tweaking our training and improving it. So we do have some of our own internal team members who are wheelchair bound that do some of that. And so it's not like we don't have employees that are also our customers, right? So we do have that in place.
right,
Jonathan,
thank
one
you.
other thing relative to training, it takes about 2 years for a technician to get fully, what we consider to be fully proficient at their job, just because of the number of products, the number of configurations and everything out there. And so when you have 30% attrition turning over and a lot of your technicians don't even get to 2 years, that's what we're fighting against right now. It's really, we're doing our best to hire the best people we can. And then unfortunately, I just was emailed, I just lost another technician in Rocky Hill. So now we're down 2. So I'm sending more in to compensate for that. But it's an uphill battle for us.
Thanks.
No, thank you. And I understand that, I just want to reiterate that, as consumer advocates, as we're pushing for hiring, more technicians to provide in-home, because again, I can't emphasize this enough. It's the only reason why it's faster to go in shop is because there's not enough staff to make it fast enough for in-home repairs. It's not really a matter of convenience for consumers. And so I hope we all understand that. But as consumers, our organizations are very open to assisting in supporting your effort to hire more staff. In addition to lobbying for changes to travel reimbursements, etc. So just wanted to make note of that.
Thanks.
I just make one comment. We have,
Okay.
in at NewMotion, we have 1 tech in shop today. We have the rest on the road. So we have a lot of resources on the road. So I just want to clarify that.
Thanks, Gary. Okay, I see we have Representative Smith and then Joe Short.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yep.
sir.
I just wanted to comment on the proceedings here, and I want to applaud the industry people, Gary, Wayne, Diane, and all of you who put together this fine presentation. It does seem to me, though, that we have, and appropriately as a task force, as a commission looking into what is considered to be a pressing issue within our state, within our community, to understand the complexities of it and what we're at the intersection here between business and human services, and it can sometimes be difficult, as we know. There's money involved, there's time involved, and a lot of, especially in this area, it's become more and more clear to me that CRT technology is indeed a higher order of technical complexity when it comes to repair, and just the importance and the real demands of the clientele that sometimes cannot move about their home, let alone to get back and forth for in-shop service. There was a little exchange a little earlier where we were talking about something. I don't remember whether it was you, Wayne, or it was Gary, but it kind of trailed off. And he said, well, that we can't afford that. And I think that's kind of the nub of this. We've been talking about this for several months now. And back in August, when we first convened, the advocates, Jonathan in particular, put out a list of advocate priorities for this commission. And of those, there are 4 or 5 the most significant ones. But it all turned, I would say, for the most part, on the availability of in-house service as opposed to in-shop service. And I am impressed by the amount of home service that you do, and I think that should not go unremarked. But I do feel that all of the discussion about all of these other ancillary issues, including pre-authorization and insurance considerations, all have to go into this. But I do feel, unlike Senator Seminaro, that we try to look for something that we don't have to legislate, and that's perfectly correct. I mean, I just as soon not be working on making laws for things that that can be fixed in the private sector. But on the other hand, we have established this commission for the purpose of just that. The General Assembly is looking into this, and I think it's something that we have to pursue at every level of complexity. But it should boil down to, most of this does have to do with the in-home repair. And if it's something you can't afford, that's a business statement. If you can't afford it, my question, to go back earlier, was how many technicians from 14 in those companies in Connecticut would you need in order to provide something within the parameters of the time frames that we've already discussed, 2 to 4 days, 3 days, maximum of 1 month for preventative maintenance requests. What would be required? How many people would you need to have? And I understand it's hard to retain these employees, but it's hard to train them. I know that temperament and the individual's comfort level in dealing with CRT users is also something that's very important. But I do want to get back to that, because I think most of everything we've been discussing in this task force turns on that in-home repair and the viability of doing it. If it's not affordable, that means that's a business comment. That's a profit loss comment. And maybe it's a private company. You don't have to disclose that. But we all know that in the perfect world where you could hire as many people as you want, there is a number that could drop this service duration to something more reasonable and address a lot of the questions that prompted the establishment of this task force. So I know, I don't remember, I think it was Gary or Wayne said that they thought I had asked that question, and I'd like to restate that question. I know you can't answer me now, but if you could do it, how many people would you need in order to bring these in-house times down to something more manageable and something more agreeable and important to the consumer?
Thank you, Representative Smith. So I think your question has to do with, again, asking the industry to try and take a look at what number of technicians it would take to be able to reduce the period of time to like a set period of 3 to 5 days or something. Is that?
Yeah. I mean, I understand, and this could be, largely theoretical, but I think it's important as a starting point. If 14 is not doing it, would 17 technicians, and I'm just talking about technicians now, not the ATPs. How many people would you need on the road in order to make all this problem resolved? Now, I'm saying in a perfect world. I know this reflects in cost, and meaning you may not want to pass on to the consumer or to the insurance companies. I realize that there's a real HR issue with this and getting the right people and the training and the years it takes to become proficient in this particular technology. But how many, what number would you need? And you could say, I can't afford it, which that's your answer. And I understand that, but that's my question. Yeah. What's the number?
Yes, sir. We're going to continue to work on that, Representative Smith. It is complex. It's also got to be something that we can delve down and easy, understandable. I don't in any way want to provide a number and it not be accurate. Okay. And say, okay, well, if we just did 17, we could fix it, and then we fail. Maybe that's the perfectionist in me. I just don't want to, especially in a legislative group, to do that. So we are going to look at that. We're going to continue to do that. And we'll work to get you that number. Okay.
Okay,
What we believe is correct.
okay. I'm going to go to Joe and then I'm going to take over because I want to shift to talking about the survey and then wrap this meeting up for 1:15. So go ahead, Joe.
All right, thank you, Senator Seminar. I just had a comment. It's more of an opinion, but I'd be curious to get Gary's opinion as well. I understand that the techs are going out. They're in not the best situations. They're having to fix chairs for people that are upset about the repairs taking so long before they even get there. So they're probably not even in the best of moods or anything of that nature. And it's a lot. It's a lot of running around and everything. But you show how many repairs are being done in home, which is impressive. But for those amount of techs, it's a lot of work. And you're saying the retention rate is you have a 30% retention rate. If there were more techs, I feel like they wouldn't be overworked as much, and you'd have a higher retention rate. That's just my opinion. I mean, most jobs that I've ever been in, that I've ever wanted to quit, is because you're extremely overworked, you're stressed out. It seems never ending. Is that the reason why you're having such hard retention rate? What do you have any idea what the cause is for that?
Well, there are a number of factors, Joe. I mean, just the labor force today, in general, if you look at any industry, people, I mean, our attrition was as low as 20% prior to COVID. Now it's way over 30%. So, COVID changed things a lot. The people's willingness to do certain jobs changed. And Beverly, I promise I'll finish up quickly here, but there are not, the work environment in general, not just our business, is difficult. I'm just going to leave it at that.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So I think this was a very good discussion. As always, I think it's very hard to have a really substantive discussion with so many people. So in terms of next steps, I wanted to sort of tell you what I'm thinking. And then if folks have any feedback, you should certainly, respond. So what I did, and I spoke to Senator Seminara and Representative Case about this, is I put together a survey tool, I guess you would say, with all of the different policy ideas that have come up on this task force. So everything from sort of the biggest nut, which is the reducing the wait period for repairs and service, and how do we do that, and some of the recommendations around that, to how do we help the industry or partner with the industry to retain and train more staff. And how do we do more in-home versus in-shop? So I'm going to rework this a little bit. Chandra was really helpful to tell me how other committees are doing it at this point, so that we can have a final report by February 1st. But it's a lot. It's probably like 18 different recommendations, and I wanted everybody to take some time to look at them. I may ask you all to sort of rate them in terms of level of importance, concerns, feedback. So it's a heavy lift for a lot of you, for everybody, I think. But I feel really strongly that we're at the point where we need to start sort of getting down to where we are going to agree and agree not to agree in this committee, because there will be both of those. And so with that said, and I will send this out to you. My plan is to get this out to you tomorrow. And I think giving like 2 weeks for people to get back. And I'm asking the state agencies to do the same, because some of these will fall into a regulatory category versus legislative. So with that said, does anybody have any questions, thoughts, concerns for me about that. I mean, and just you can say it now, which is completely appropriate. I've tried to be open and transparent. That's how I want to run this committee. Or you can reach out to me after this at some point. But that is my thinking at this point. So does anybody have any questions, concerns, feedback on that? Really?
I guess
Jonathan.
sure. So here's an obvious question.
I
So
knew you were going to say something.
As you said, if we have to agree to disagree, how do we plan on balancing in the report, recommendations that don't reach a consensus? I'm aware, we're all aware, several of us represent industries. Just take insurance for one. Last week it was made very clear, on policy, the private insurance industry will oppose any mandates, right? So just take that for an example. If we can't reach consensus on something that addresses private insurance, how would that be presented in the report? Or is there going to be room for recommendations that don't reach consensus?
Thanks, Jonathan. I'll answer to the best of my knowledge. I'm in the process of reviewing some task force reports from other task forces, but my thinking at this point is that we will have we have to address what's in the legislation, right? The different points and the data that we've gained throughout this process. And then I think how we would structure it would be those areas in which everybody agrees, those areas where there's not agreement and why. And then some sort of maybe going forward recommendations. But that's sort of as far as my thinking has gone at this point. I don't expect there's going to be consensus on everything. There will be consensus on some things, and not consensus on other things. And I think that should be reflected in the report. So that's my thinking. And this survey is one way to start to begin to have that discussion and get down to sort of those kinds of brass tacks. So hopefully that answers your question, at least in part, Jonathan.
Yes. Essentially, to rephrase, the report will be a transparent collection of recommendations, and will point out who recommends what.
That is certainly my intent, and how I have approached this process and how I plan to close out this process, and how that translates into legislation or regulatory action is probably a little bit above my pay grade, but I very much believe everybody sitting at this table wants to improve the services and the repair and the experience of wheelchair consumers in our state. And it is that goal that is going to guide, I think, all of us and certainly me as I'm putting together the report. So with that being said, are there any other comments, questions, concerns people want to raise at this point? Okay, so my plan would be to get this survey tool out to you by tomorrow and to ask people to have it back by the 30th to Chandra. The 30th is our next meeting. Okay.
Oh,
Or hold on a second. I was just thinking it probably would be better to have it if we can have it back by the 29th. And, given that that's the Thanksgiving holiday, that may be tough for people, but I'm going to get it out to you now so we can try and do that. I think it's in all of our best interests to really dig deep on this and try and get as much information as you can. So I'm going to ask that people get it back by the 29th. And for my part, I will get it out to everybody by tomorrow. Yeah, Jonathan, do you have any final remarks?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify the recommendations that will be on the survey are those that were included in the presentation, or do those also include what were part of the?
What I have put together is a survey that includes all of the policy ideas that have been brought forward by consumers, by industry, and by way of discussion in these meetings. And if I'm missing something, you will have the opportunity to add it. Okay.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Okay.
And I just again want to thank everyone. You know, last week I had made a comment, you know, saying that consumers didn't have a seat at the table, and I just want to clarify, I was not speaking about this task force. You guys are a wonderful group of people. When I've had an opportunity to meet some of you in person, it's been great, and I really appreciate, you know, the effort that we've all put into this. And I just kind of want to, my closing comment I would say is, you know, when is the next time a wheelchair repair task force is going to be formed? And if we can think about that and the importance of these recommendations, no matter what can be legislated in the near term, you know, that this document can be really useful in resolving these issues, you know, for years to come. I really believe that that's the importance of this, and really appreciate everyone's effort for that.
Thank you, Jonathan, for saying that. I think a number of us, including myself, who had a kind of a little personal reaction to that statement. I appreciate the clarification. And with that, I think we can wrap it up for today. I want to wish everybody a peaceful, wonderful holiday with your families and some much needed time of rest. And we will look for your stuff to be back on the 29th, and we will meet again on the 30th. Okay. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Thank you.